Hello, everyone. This is the COPA credentialing team. My name is Precious Collins, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the credential manager.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Agenbrod. I am, pronouns she, her, and I am the credential specialist for COPA.
Awesome. Thank you for clicking on the video and being curious about what has been updated and changed pertaining to the CPFS manual, as well as the Certemy application, which will be a different video. Katie will lead that video in discussing what the new certification application looks like in Certemy for this credential. Again, this is for the Colorado Peer and Family Specialist credential. You can click on our website, the Colorado Prevention Specialist credential to see the videos related to that credential. So with that, we're going to go over our new manual here very quickly. Just because there has not been a whole lot of updates. There's been some, but most of this is going to look very familiar to you. The layout is going to look a little different from the old manual, I will say, because we tried to streamline everything and make it more usable for you as the applicant. So with that, you can see the table of contents. The sections are all linked, so you can click on each section if you want to refer back to this manual while you're filling your application out. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started into the introduction. Just a brief overview of the credential as a reminder. This credential is held under COPA, which is the Colorado Providers Association. And we are also under the IC&RC, which is International Certification Reciprocity Consortium. We follow their standards. This credential is actually issued through them, but we manage it. And so we follow their standards, which aligns with the SAMHSA national standards for peer support specialists. And IC&RC also is the administrator of the IC&RC peer recovery exam, which is required for this credential. Onto the role of Colorado peer specialists. You are a professional with a personal experience in recovery, either directly as a person who has gone through mental health or substance use challenges, or as a family member or loved one. Again, that's where the family part comes in. So if you are not a person with a direct personal experience, you can still apply for this credential as a family member or a loved one of someone who is going through their recovery or their challenges with substance use or mental health challenges. So I want to keep that in mind for this credential. If you do not have personal lived experience, unfortunately, this credential may not be for you. So let's move on down into the initial CPFS requirements. You are at the minimum for this credential. We require a high school diploma or education or equivalent. You can see the list there. We do require training of a minimum of 60 hours for this credential. 46 of those hours are in the core domain trainings. So that covers the advocacy, ethics, mentoring, and education, as well as recovery and wellness support. And we'll go over that later on here in the manual, what those skills and activities are under each of those. But we're going to, from here on out, refer to this as the IC&RC core domain trainings for the CPFS application. Along with that, we do require an additional training of 14 hours. This has to be peer focused. It cannot be clinical. No clinical trainings will be accepted for any of the training hours for this credential. So keep that in mind. You will also have to utilize the training that is listed on the CPFS approved training list, especially for your core domain trainings. You cannot piecemeal this section. Piecemeal, I mean by 1 hour, 2 hours here, uploading a bunch of certificates under advocacy, ethics, mentoring, or recovery. They have to be core domain trainings, and you can find that list on our CPFS approved training list. There's a tab. It'll say core domain training, and then you click on that tab and it'll list out all the approved core domain trainings, that you have a menu of selection there. So on to the next requirement, work experience and supervised experience. This has not changed as far as the minimum hours. You are still required to have a work experience of 500 hours minimum. This could be paid or volunteer. There are some bullet points under there, so please make sure you read the manual thoroughly to understand what else is required for each of these hours. Supervised, still the same, 25 hours minimum. For both the work experience and supervised experience, you will need to have a supervisor attest to those hours. In Certemy, Katie will do again another video talking about how to send that invitation out through Certemy to those supervisors so that they can fill that form out and attest to those hours. And then you can meet that minimum requirement for this application. Another requirement is your lived experience requirement. It has not changed. There are 3 questions that we ask you in Certemy to verify your lived experience. Ethical conduct and release statement. This is similar to what we had in the past, but we did add a release statement onto that. So you will need to read the release statement and the code of ethical conduct. And then Certemy in your application, you'll attest to reading it and adhering to those requirements. Another requirement of this credential is that your credential will need to be reviewed by the CPFS committee in order to move on to the examination process. And then from there, be issued your credential. And so you can see here that you will need to take a exam. It's the IC&RC peer recovery exam. Once you pass that exam, then you'll be issued your credential. We'll go over that later on in the manual here, but that is a requirement. Additional requirements for this credential is that you must live or work in at least 51% of the time in Colorado at the time of your application. This is not a requirement here under additional recommendations. It's a recommendation, but it's a new one. It is recommended right now that applicants have a minimum of 2 years of recovery prior to applying to this credential. So this again is a recommendation, but as of next year in March 2026, it will be required. It will become a formal requirement of this credential. So be prepared for that. We're giving you pretty much a year of adjustment time and a year to gain further to meet that minimum 2-year requirement if you plan on getting your application completed after March of 2026. And then fees. These have not changed. The only change is that all fees are not going to be refundable. So these fees are non-refundable. Please make sure when you start your application, you now will be required to pay the registration fee first. Before you pay that registration, make sure you're in the right application because COPA holds 2 credentials. We have the Colorado Peer and Family Specialist credential, as well as the Certified Colorado Prevention Specialist credential. That's the CCPS credential. We've had some people mistakenly apply for the wrong credential, and we've had to, do some refunds. We're no longer going to be doing that. So please make sure that you have that you're in the right credential application. All right. And so moving on to our section 2.2, IC&RC peer recovery domains. As I had mentioned earlier in that introductory section, all the training and the working experience hours that you gain have to be related and cover these domains under this credential. So under IC&RC peer recovery, there's 4 domains. There's advocacy and mentoring education, recovery wellness, and ethical responsibility. As you can see, the bullets under all of these are activities and skills that are acceptable under this credential. So one thing that we like to tell applicants, especially new applicants, is go through this domain list and highlight areas that you are unfamiliar with, and maybe even highlight areas that you're familiar with but might need more training. And the reason why we advise you to do this as one of your first steps before taking training or continuing your training and also your work and experience hours is you can identify areas that you need to work on, and you can gain more knowledge and skills under. This is going to help you in not only your application process, but it is going to be extremely helpful when you take the IC&RC exam. The IC&RC exam is weighted on these domains. And so there's going to be questions related to any part of these domains and activities. So just be prepared for that. And it's not to intimidate you or to cause any fear. The passing rate for this credential is extremely high. The people who have taken time to understand what these activities are under each of these domains, people who have taken great core domain trainings, they have taken and been curious about having conversations with their supervisor and seeking out guidance and support for themselves in their work. They have done extremely well in passing their exam. So don't feel intimidated. It's just we want to set you up for success. So be knowledgeable about these domains. Awesome. So on to application timeline. Nothing has changed here. I will say that when you do your application for your initial as well as for your recertification, we do ask that all your training and your experience hours that are getting uploaded, they must fall within 5 years from your application ready to review date. So let's say today, March or February 20th, 2025, my application is ready to review. All my training and my experience hours and supervised hours in my application must fall within 5 years from this date. If they fall within outside of that, so 5+ years longer, those hours and won't be able to be applicable to my application. I'll have to exclude those hours and re-upload more hours. So keep that in mind. Once you are credentialed, your credential is valid for 2 years. And your information will be issued on a credential certificate. It'll have your expiration date as well as your credential number. The COPA Code of Ethical Conduct and Release Statement. Again, this is not new. Half of it is a little new. We did add a release statement that you will have to read and attest to again on through Certemy, but these documents will also be on our COPA website, so you can see them under the CPFS credential webpage, as well as the COPA grievance policies and procedures. Nothing there has changed. The document has been actually reviewed and updated, but if you have any questions about that, please take a look at that document on our website. And over to you, Katie.
Awesome. Thank you, Precious. So as Precious mentioned, we're going to be doing a separate step-by-step walkthrough of Certemy that will get into all of the nitty-gritty details of your application process there. So I'm going to breeze through a lot of this step-by-step section, but please do review it on your own time. Make sure to read through everything we have here, as it is all important. As Precious mentioned, the registration fee is one thing that has changed a bit. Previously, when you started your new application, you saw all the steps. Now you'll see that registration fee first. So make sure you're in the right application, pay that fee, and then you'll see the rest of your application steps. I just want to reiterate, this has been here before, but when you do sign up for an application, make sure to use the name associated with your government issued ID, both on your account name and on the applicant information part of your credential application. I use this name to pre-register you for the exam, and they will turn you away at the testing site if the name you're pre-registered or registered under does not match your government issued ID that you bring with you. So just make sure on that. Everything else I will go through during the Certemy video, but I do want to get into some more granular details of things that have changed a little bit. So supervisor requirements have changed a little bit, changed some language around behavioral health versus human services. So they're required to have 2 years of experience in behavioral health. If they are not credentialed, certified, licensed, or hold a degree in behavioral health, they now have to take a supervisor training that is on the approved training list in a specific supervisor training section. We do also highly recommend now that they take a core ethics training. It's not a requirement, but it is a recommendation. It is also required for them to read this manual and the code of ethics as well. So make sure that you get with them to do that and make sure that has been done. As far as lived experience goes, not much has changed. The questions have been edited a little bit to make them a little bit more clear as what we're asking. But those are the same process of just answering those 3 questions in Certemy. Required documentation, not a lot has changed here as well. The formal education, you'll upload one of these options in the same way you have before. Verification of training hours, same thing. The certificates of completion will go into the same Certemy domains here. One change we did make is for additional training. If you do upload a training that is not on the CPFS approved training list, you'll go into this additional information section to justify why it relates to this credential. And then supervisor verification, same process. We'll go through that in our other video, and lived experience, we'll go through that in our other video as far as the Certemy process goes. Training guidelines, this section is super important, so make sure you tune in as there have been some changes here. For acceptable training formats, the biggest change is that we no longer accept online or offline self-paced training for initial applications. So your training must be a webinar, a continuing education course, group training in person or virtual, or a live conference. So as you'll see here, self-paced online or offline training, including training platforms such as Relias, will not be accepted. Independent studies are not accepted, community meetings, motivational speakers, clinical focus training. This is the same as it was before, but just to reiterate, CAS, CAT, LAC courses or training in assessment, treatment, diagnosis, and counseling or therapy are still not accepted for initial credentialing. And then this is also the same, but any non-CPFS type of coaching, so life coaching, business coaching, wellness coaching, health coaching, and fitness coaching will still not be accepted for initial applications. The timeline for approval and next steps is the same as it was before. So we still have that 10-day deadline before the monthly CPFS committee review for you to get your application complete up to this step here, the committee review step. Once your application, all steps are complete up to there, you'll be considered ready for review. I will pull your application and let you know that it's been put on the committee agenda as long as you get it in 10 days prior to the CPFS committee meeting. And then the committee will review your application. There are 3 possible outcomes. They're the same as before. Approved, if the committee approves, I will let you know and also send you your pre-registration information for the IC&RC exam. RFAI, request for more information. If the committee has any requests for additional details on any part of your application, I'll send that your way after the review. And then rejected, this is very, very rare. But if this does happen, we will notify you with next steps, but it is truly very rare. And then exam eligibility. Like I said, once you're approved by the CPFS committee, I will send the pre-registration information to you via email. Please make sure to check your spam folder for this. A lot of times it goes to spam. I will also forward you the information. So it'll be an email from me and then the email from the testing company right behind. Sometimes that also goes to spam. So just make sure if you're getting to a point where you're like, I feel like I should have received something about my exam by now, check your spam folder. If you still don't see anything, feel free to reach out to me. And then once you do receive that, review it very thoroughly. There's a lot of information on there. And once you get to the exam, it's out of our hands as far as how that process goes. So IC&RC's testing partner handles the scheduling, they handle the administration, all of that until your results are returned back to us. So make sure you read that pre-registration email in detail, as well as the email that you'll get post-registration. That is very important. And then if you do need to cancel or reschedule your exam, please reach out to the testing company. Their information will be on that pre-registration email, and it's within 5 days of your exam date. So if you reach out to us to reschedule your exam, we will not be able to do that. So please, please, please make sure to read that pre-registration email for information like that. Once you have passed your exam, your results will come to us and we will upload them into Certemy for you in that final step of the application right here and issue your final credential. Exam results are typically processed on Fridays. So you should keep an eye out for that. If you take your exam on a Monday, you'll get your credential usually by that Friday. And then if you fail your exam, we'll also let you know by email and then give you the next steps, which involve waiting 90 days before you can be pre-registered again, just so you have some time to re-prepare for that next testing date. And then also an $80 retake fee. If you do show up at the testing center and your ID is not correct or something else happens or you just don't go, then you will have to pay an $80 fee to get a new pre-registration as well. So once that is completed, congratulations, you have your credential, and you will move on to the recertification process. So at that point, you can start collecting your continuing education hours and engaging in professional development. Recertification, a lot has stayed the same, but there are some small changes. The hours, the 30 total hours are the same, 24 hours of general peer focused training and 6 hours of peer focused ethics training. There is a new cap. So there are 4 hours of clinical training that is applicable to a peer role. It must apply to a peer role. It can't just be general clinical training, and it can only be up to those 4 hours. And it can also only be submitted into the 24 hours of general peer focused training. Just as it was before, no clinical training can be submitted into ethics. It has to be peer specific ethics. If you are having a struggle finding new ethics trainings that's peer focused, then you're welcome to take one you've taken in the past. And then you will complete your recertification application through Certemy. Again, we'll do a separate video on that, showing you the small things that have changed and walking you through that process. And then once your application is complete, you'll go back into committee review. So I'm going to breeze through the step-by-step, but make sure you do read it when you're reviewing the manual yourself, and also watch that video we put out. But I do want to focus on the training guidelines for recertification. These are different than the initial. So if you are an initial applicant, just go back to the initial section. Do not pay attention to these for now. But the acceptable training formats for recertification are webinars, continuing education courses, group training, in-person or virtual, live conferences, and then you can submit online self-paced trainings or offline self-paced trainings for recertification. Cannot for initial, but you can for recert. But you must be able to provide a certificate of completion if you do submit one of those trainings. And then training restrictions and limitations. This one's also different from the initial, where no clinical training is allowed. For the recert, you can submit, like I mentioned, up to those 4 hours of clinical training, as long as it is applicable to the peer role and justified in that additional information section. This is the initial, but it looks the same on the recert. You'll be able to justify why that more clinically focused training applies to your peer credential. Training formats not accepted are community meetings, motivational speakers, and then clinical training. Your CAS, CAT, CAC, LAC courses are still not accepted for recertification. Clinical topics that include assessment, treatment, diagnosis, counseling, and therapy focuses, and then clinical ethics training as described before. Also those life coaching, business coaching, wellness coaching, health coaching, fitness coaching, same as the initial. You will submit your continuing education statement in Certemy. None of these questions have changed. And then the timeline for approval and next steps is the same as the initial. The only difference is if when you're approved, I'll send you your updated credential rather than a pre-registration for the exam. Deadlines and late renewal policy. So your credential is valid for 2 years after your initial credential is issued. So that expiration date that Precious was talking about. Renewal applications must be submitted at least 30 days before expiration. And then if you submit your super early, we will hold on to it until 3 months prior to your expiration date. Late renewal, if you pass that expiration date by 30 days, you enter into a grace period where we won't apply the reinstatement fee. But if you hit 1 month past that, we will apply a $50 reinstatement fee. And you'll be in the grace period where you can still renew your credential, but just with that $50 reinstatement fee. If you do not renew your credential within 1 year of your expiration date, it will be considered inactive and you'll have to reapply as an initial applicant, meeting all current requirements at that time for initial applicants. So I will hand it back over to Precious to go over the policies and procedures.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Katie, for that. So for the policies and procedures, these documents, the committee review processes, actually, that all of these are going to be attached as an appendix. So we do ask you to review those for your information. But I have some, key bullet points under each one for the committee review. The committee meets monthly. once a month for application reviews, and they also meet on an for an administrative meeting, where if your application is not reviewed during the first meeting, we could actually move you over to the next meeting. It might be the next month, but depending on our schedule of meetings. But just know that even if we end up moving your application because we have had an increase in application reviews, know that you won't be penalized for it if we end up having to move your application to the next month. So keep that in mind for recertification. If you're like, I'm expiring and I need to get this done, and we end up having to move your application to be reviewed to the next month, and it puts you out further from your expiration date, there won't be any consequences on your part. We'll make sure to adjust for that. All right. So just want to throw that out there. For the appeals, denials, and then also grievance procedures, again, that'll be attached to our manual here as an appendix, but just to know that any appeals for denied applications must be sent back to us within 30 days from that COPA email notification. So from either Katie or I, when we notify you that your application has been denied, we will have the committee justification. If we don't hear back from you after 30 days, we won't be in the appeal process. So please make sure to respond back within 30 days of that notification. For credential lapse and reinstatement, again, Katie covered this a little bit already, but it is a policy of ours. If your application is within a month from your expiration date, for recertification, you have a grace period there. We're not going to charge you that $50 reinstatement fee. If you can get it in within a month from after your expiration date, you're okay. If you go beyond a month, now you're required to pay that $50 reinstatement fee. And that's all the way up to 12 months. If you go beyond 12 months, you are now in that inactive phase, and you will have to reapply as a new applicant, which means you'll have to go through the process of initial application again. So keep that in mind if you want to prevent yourself from any credential lapses. Keep those dates, put it in your calendar, and set deadlines for yourself. So with that, Katie, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add, well, actually two things. When you were talking about the committee review process, something that does come up as a question is if we can expedite that review process. So can the committee review my application sooner? Unfortunately, we cannot. Our committee is made up of volunteer, amazing professionals out there in the peer workforce. So their time is limited to that once a month review for applications and then the admin meeting. So if you do know that you have a deadline you need to meet to get your credential, please allow like 2 to 3 months just to give yourself a big buffer to get that credential ready to review. So that way you don't have any holdups on your end if you have a personal deadline. And then also, I just wanted to reiterate that all changes in this manual are for people who started their application after February 2025. So if you started your application prior to February 2025, you will still be in the old manual, and your Certemy will look the same. Nothing will change from your previous process up until September 1st of 2025. So we're giving you 6 months to get your application completed up to the old standards, or held to the old standards, old manual, all of that. But if it is not completed by September 1st, 2025, then you will be moved over to the new version of Certemy and held to these new manual standards.
And that's the same for recertification as well, right?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. And how about the people who start their application after February 2025?
They will see the updated version of Certemy. So definitely check out those videos of what the updated application looks like and changes that have been made if you're starting your application after March. And also this manual and all the guidelines and standards within it are what your application will be held to.
Awesome. So with that, applicants, if you're initial and you're thinking about the credential, if you're in your recertification, at any point, if you have any questions, please reach out to Katie. Her email is Katie, Katie, @co providersassociation.org. And she will be happy to help you with any technical assistance with the application. If you have any questions about the new standards and I shouldn't say standards, but the new updates to the manual, because the standards are still the same. We just now have more guidelines under each of those standards. So if you have any questions, reach out. Again, we're in a grace period, so you have up until 6 months. So September 1st, 2025. After September 1st, 2025, these new requirements, this new manual, the new Certemy applications will all be the new updated versions. So keep that in mind. Again, just to reiterate, if you're in a recertification process or if you already have an initial application open and you're working on that, try to get it in before September 1st. If not, your application will get updated to this new manual and new Certemy credential version in Certemy. So thank you. And with that, have a great day.